So welcome everybody to tonight's virtual program on Washington Oaks Gardens State Park. We're going to take a look at where it's located. We're going to look a little bit about the history of the area, and then we're going to take a hike. So Washington Oaks Garden State Park is located down near Palm Coast. So if you're coming from Jacksonville, come down 95, turn on 206, that takes you across the intercoastal Crescent Beach, and then down A1A for about 10 miles, and Washington Oaks Gardens is on your right. Real easy sign to see to get to it right here. So it's real easy to find. Let's talk a little bit about the area. Of course, Native Americans were here before we were. I don't think that they lived at this particular area. What I read was that they would cross over from the mainland and come over here and fish and get shellfish and stuff like that. The Rose Garden, in fact, is on a shell mound, an old shell mound. In the early 1800s, Jose Hernandez from Minorca bought this land and built a plantation here. His plantation was actually down about a mile south of where Washington Oaks is, but this was part of his property. In 1845, his daughter married a relative of George Washington, and they took over the place and called it the Washington Place. Then in the early 1930s, Louise Clark, who was in the Philippines making linen and tablecloth and embroidery, met Owen Young, who was an executive that had founded RCA. He was also the CEO of General Electric for a while, and he had gone on a vacation there to the Philippines, and they were on a slow boat coming back to the States and fell in love and got married. And so Louise bought this land and then called it Washington Oaks. And they improved the area, built the gardens, and lived there for a bunch of years. And then Owen died, and then later Louisa died and left all the land as a state park, with the only stipulation being that the gardens be maintained, which wasn't a problem. So then in 1964, it became a state park. Let's take a look at what encompasses the area. And I'm not going to start kind of in order here. I'm going to start here at the entrance. So this is A1A. When you come down A1A, you turn right and you pass the guardhouse where you got to pay the ranger station. And then you come in, and immediately in front of you is a little bit of parking, and the gardens are just a little south of that. We turn left and go down. This is the old A1A, and I'll talk a little more about that now, but this is the old highway A1A. And you can take it all the way down to the end to a parking area. There's a picnic area here, a restroom, small playground, and the trailhead for the Malacompra Trail, which goes back up toward the gardens. So that's how we'll start our hike. So let's see, I've covered the picnic area and playground, the Malacompra Trail. The gardens here are in the center. If you just want to visit the gardens, there's parking right here where you can do that. There's greenhouses, and then there's a real pretty waterfront area along the intercoastal. And then north of the gardens is a small parking area here and a loop trail consisting of the consisting of the Jungle Road Trail and the Tamukran Trail. So this is a loop trail right here. And it just comes back to where the north of the gardens. When you leave Washington Oaks, or when you arrive at it, if you turn east rather than west and drive down a road, you'll come to a beach here that is also part of the park. So you need the entrance fee to park here at the park. And there's some unique coquina formations there that we'll talk about. So what we're going to do today on our virtual hike is we're going to come in, we're going to drive down south to the south parking lot. Then we're going to hike up the Malacompa Trail, stopping here at a little private beach. Then we're going to walk along the waterfront. We're going to spend time in the garden area, looking around there. Then we'll go north of the garden area and hike this loop trail, back through the garden area, back around the beach again, and then back down to where we parked our car. So that whole hike right there is about 3 miles, plus whatever time you add walking around the garden's very pretty, but not that large, walking around that small garden. So it's a pretty easy hike. So when you're coming down A1A, here's the sign you'll see for Washington Oaks Garden State Park. You enter and you pay at the pay station. Then you come into a stop sign. We turn left. Remember, we're heading south down old A1A to the very end and into the parking lot where the playground and our trailhead's going to be. This sidewalk leads to a nice restroom. You see there's several picnic areas, playgrounds right over here to the left. And then if you go around behind the restroom, I'll show you in a minute, is the trailhead, the Malacompa Trail. So you'll see a long pavilion here, and here's the Malacompa Trail. It goes about a half a mile up to the gardens. So it's not a very long trail. So this is the beginning of the Malacompa Trail, goes along pretty much along the intercoastal. Beautiful trail, flat, wide, easy to walk on. And we'll just head up the trail with my grandkids. There we are. And about, I don't know, about 100 yards up, you come to a little beach area. You see here where I've got this arrow. And it's a real pretty little private beach area. Sometimes I've seen some people fishing there. Sometimes I've seen a family there. Let me play the video again. Sometimes I see a little family there. This time we had it to ourselves, but it's a nice, pretty little private area. Pretty beach there on the intercoastal. When we're done, we'll head back, cross the little creek, and then keep going north up to the garden area. Again, we're back on the Malacompa Trail. Very pretty. At the end, we come to the visitor center, which is still closed. Don't know when that's going to open. And it's got a little small museum in there, and pretty interesting, but it's been closed for some time now. We're going to bear to the left so we can walk around. On this waterfront area here, which is always busy with people fishing and just looking around. Really pretty. Plenty of benches, a couple little picnic tables, places to clean your fish if you catch any. So it's a pretty area. Now we get to the end of this, then we'll kind of turn right and head back up that little shell mound and into the garden area. So you can see here how the elevation rises a little bit. This is an old shell midden. And that takes us to the entrance to the garden area. So we're kind of in the center of the garden. I mean, into the rose garden area. So we're kind of in the center of the garden area. Let's take a look at this map for a second. Now let me orient you first. We came up this way. The parking lot's down this way. We walked along the waterfront here, and we came up. We went through that archway, and that brings us into the rose garden. So when you come out of the rose garden, you can walk a couple different ways. There's real pretty trails around these ponds. If you go straight through, I'll show you a little later, there's some beautiful live oak. And so you just walk around these trails a little bit. This place is really well maintained by a volunteer Washington Oaks Gardens Society, and they're out there all the time cleaning up and making sure everything looks just perfect. When we're done looking around the gardens, then we just head north over here to go to the nature trails and do the loop up there. So this is kind of a look at the roses, all different colors, beautiful, fragrant, nice to smell. And then we'll come across and just kind of look around in the gardens, and I'll just take you on a little tour, just kind of walking around the trails here. The place is not that big, so you're not going to get lost. That's that beautiful oak tree I was talking about. Probably one of the prettiest live oak trees I've seen. Of course, it's well maintained with arborists and all that to make sure that it stays perfect. And lots of pretty scenes and gazebos around the pond area. And if you don't want to walk that far, you can just park down where we parked and just walk up here to the gardens and look at the gardens and then walk back. Or like I said, you can park right at the gardens, either here or here if you want to. And we're going to head north. So we're walking out of the gardens now, through a little parking lot here and up to the loop trails. So this is the trailhead for the jungle trail. There's a small map here, and then behind here is a little porta potty. And we'll just head up the trail. Another beautiful flat trail, easy to hike. Well, the jungle road trail, I guess, because it kind of looks like a jungle. When we get up to the far end of it, we end at these double columns, which used to be one of the entrances to the facility, to the plantation, off of the old A1A. So now we're just looking at the columns from the other direction. And this road right here was the old A1A that went south through Florida. The Youngs, being rich and influential, asked the state to move the highway so that it wasn't so close to their property. So A1A got moved about, I don't know, probably about half a mile to the east. So the old brick A1A is still here. So that's kind of a look south down old A1A. We'll take another look at it from the other direction a little later on. So we just cross old A1A, and the trail kind of changes names to the Tamukran Trail, and we'll take it back down to the garden area. This is another beautiful trail. Starts out through a forested area, but pretty soon we come out into an area that looks kind of like a scrub area. And this area used to be treed, but Hurricane Matthew brought so much salt water in here that saltwater intrusion destroyed most of the trees. State park system kind of left the trees hoping they'd revive, but then they realized that it was really a big fire danger with all those dead trees around. So they kind of had to clear it out. And when they did so, they also looked at some old maps and old photographs and show that throughout history, this area has been cleaned out by saltwater intrusion, hurricanes, and then grew back and then got cleared out again. So they didn't feel so bad about leaving it this way. They said, well, this is one of the natural states of this particular area. But I can remember, before Matthew, when I had hikes down here, this was all through a covered forest. But you see, we're coming back to the tree line here, just so we're coming a little bit further at, where the water didn't get to, and the tree line is up here. So we're back in the tree line. So we're back into the forest now. It was not destroyed by the salt water. And then we're at the south side of the old A1A, and they got a sign here commemorating the old highway. In 1955, the highway was moved from this location at the request of O&D Young. So he got his way. Now we're going to just finish up our hike, coming back to that north parking lot. We'll walk back through the garden, back through the rose garden, down to the waterfront. Beautiful waterfront. You can see a lot of activity there all the time. Very, very pretty. Back to our trail, back down the trail, and back to the parking lot. So that would be our 3-ish mile hike and our visit to the garden area. Very, very pretty. Now, next thing we want to do is go across and take a look at the beach. So we'll hop in the car, drive back up old A1A, back past the ranger station, and then right across A1A to the beach area. So there's plenty of parking there. This is kind of overflow parking here. This place gets pretty crowded. Now, this is an aerial view of what the beach looks like, and you can see the coquina rock formation here. This is all water and the waves coming in. And so this is a coquina rock formation we see along the beach. And it's a type of sedimentary rock formed zillions of years ago, deposit hardening of mineral and organic particles. Acidic rainwater kind of dissolves the calcium in the shells, which kind of glues them together. And this is a pretty unique formation here that you don't see many places in the world. And this stretches here from St. Augustine, Palm County, and a little further south. This is probably the second largest deposit you see in Florida. I think there's a larger deposit down near Jupiter Beach. So it's always good to plan your visit when you come down here to low tide if you want to see the rock, because otherwise it'd be covered by high tide. So I just happened to be lucky. I was here at exactly when low tide was, so that turned out pretty good. And the amount of rock you see and where you see it changes with shifting sands. I hadn't been down here for about a year, and I didn't see near as much rock as I remember from previous trips, but it's still quite a bit. You can see it here. And this would be mined by folks and used as a building material. So you can still swim in here, but you don't know what rocks and how level the surface is underneath there. So a lot of people come to this beach, but you don't really see the kind of swimming you would see at other beaches. But it certainly is, if you're down there, it certainly is worthwhile to drive over here and take a peek. Excuse me, take a little walk. So Washington Oak Garden State Park, as you can see, very beautiful, flat, easy trails. I think most of these trails, certainly the Malacompa Trail, could be done on a wheelchair easily. I think it gets a little rough up in this area, but certainly some of the other trails, and certainly all the trails within the gardens, are perfect for folks who use wheels. Great views and activities along the intercoastal. We saw the beautiful gardens with the roses and the live oak, the ponds and the plants. They have a plant sale down there. They have greenhouses. They have a plant sale down there. I think it's the second Saturday of every month. Down here, picnic area and playground. My grandkids played down there at the playground for a while before we took our walk up. You've got that nice little private beach you might be able to use if you get there first. The old A1A highway is pretty neat to look at. And then you can get across there and take a look at the Coquina Beach as well. So a lot of neat things to see down there. But we're not done. While you're there, You drive south about a mile, you come to Bing's Landing. That's a county park. And one of the highlights of Bing's Landing is Captain's Barbecue, this building right here. And they have the best food and the best service. They play blues music on the sound system. Not loud, but nice and quiet. So you get some blues and barbecue at the same time. Now, of course, there's more to Bing's Landing County Park. Let me say first that a few years ago, somebody tripped on some back steps back here. This is county land, and Captain's Barbecue is allowed to stay there. I think they were probably there before this became a county park. But anyway, somebody tripped back there and sued, and they sued the county, they sued Bing, they sued Captain's, and turned out maybe it was county maintenance problem, and that broiled into a long lawsuit. And then the county started looking at ways to improve the county park, and one of their plans was to do away with Captain's Barbecue, which raised a huge hue and cry and gigantic protests from everybody. Every time I go down there, it's packed. And so I think that's on hold now, and Captain's Barbecue is there to stay. But since you're so close, you need to go down there and eat. But the park also has a waterfront. They have a boat landing ramp back here. They've got a playground. They've got some picnic areas, and they've exposed the archaeological dig they hid here. This was the location of Hernandez's plantation house, Bella Vista, and so they've left that open. And there's a little boardwalk around there where you can kind of walk around and look at the archaeological dig there at his old plantation house location. We're not done yet. You go directly across the street, there's a Malacompra trail here that goes about 2 3/4 miles down to the beach. And it's got boardwalks and different things. It's kind of a pretty trail. And also, I think some bike organizations built a mountain bike trail here. So this red trail here kind of shows the walk down to the beach. I haven't been on that myself, but it's supposed to be real pretty, and a lot of it's boardwalk as you go over so low areas and salt marsh areas and stuff like that. And then you got this mountain bike route here that looks pretty neat. So you can try that as well. Okay, that does it for taking a look at Washington Oaks Garden State Park. About an hour from where I live in South Mandarin. So it's not a bad drive. And it's really worthwhile when you get there to spend some time walking around, walking the trails, seeing the garden, slipping down to Captain's for a little bit to eat, taking a look at the beach. So it's all well worthwhile.